The New York Knicks won their first road game of the season last night in Dallas, and it wasn't a player or a coach who was responsible for the win. I'll explain in this episode. I'm Mike Spendley, host of From the Bench, a Knicks podcast. 52 years ago, I was a Knicks ball boy, and I sat on the New York Knicks bench when they won their last championship in 1973. I know what it takes to win a title in this game of basketball. We will talk how the Knicks got that win last night with my guest, Matt Spendley, the Director of Digital Engagement at Sportsnet New York. Matt also happens to be my nephew. Matthew, welcome to From the Bench, a Knicks podcast. I'm really glad you're here, buddy.
Thanks, Uncle Mike. Of course. I mean, this is just like our normal conversations, right? It's like at Christmas or Thanksgiving, or I'm calling you on the phone, talk Knicks, talk anything. This is what we do.
This is it's a family love. We all have that united. We can talk about the first games we went to, the games that we gathered on holidays to watch the Knicks play, but the Knicks are in our blood. We bleed blue and orange all the time, buddy, okay? I'm going to start out with answering the question that we brought up in the open. This New York Knicks team is nothing if not resilient. It's my opinion that if you're going to contend for a title, it's probably one box that has to be checked off if you expect to win anything. You know, sometimes you got to grind to get a win. They shoot horrible from three in the first half. They did not defend the perimeter at all through three quarters. You throw in 16 misses from the free throw line, and you're staring at an ugly loss to an undermanned Dallas team. Go from there, pal.
Well, the Knicks, if you saw this stat, the first team in NBA history to miss 30-plus threes and 15-plus free throws and win the game in regulation. So I think to your point, they had no business winning this game. However, the Mavericks obviously also incredibly undermanned. No Cooper Flag, no Kyrie, obviously, no Anthony Davis. And the end of the game, the Knicks miss 5 free throws. Brunson hits 1 to bring it back. And to your resilience point, the Knicks follow their leader, right? To have Brunson back in the fold was obviously a treat. I don't think he really skipped much of a beat. I didn't think he looked 100%, but I think one great thing about Brunson and the way he plays is even when he's not feeling 100% healthy, he just knows how to score. I mean, it's his footwork. It's everything about his offensive game that leads them there. And they had some big shots down the stretch. I think the resilience, to your point, is always going to be a carrying trait. And I think Brown is preaching that to them as well, right? You agree?
Absolutely. I mean, look, last year, they've taken this resilience. They had it last year. We saw it. They come into the Boston series and do what they did. They looked out in games, and they always came back. I think that's something that Mike Brown says to himself, hey, I know I inherited a good team, but the fact that they are never out of a game and they play hard right until the final buzzer is huge. I didn't really notice much of a difference with Brunson in terms of any rust spots either. The fact that he was on the floor made a huge difference. Now, you said they missed 5 free throws. He missed the first one of 2. That made 6 straight free throws in the last minute and 45 seconds that you're sitting there going, really? I mean, resiliency is one thing. Maybe I'll take it from uppercase letters and move it down because I didn't think that they'd come out with a win like that.
Well, how about Shamet too? Shamet hits the 2 huge threes. You're like, oh, he's the hero of the game. This is great. And then he goes to the line and misses both. And you're like, come on, man. And did you think Mitch was going to hit one of those free throws? When he went to the line, are you thinking he's going to make one? Or did you say, he's going to miss both? What did you think?
I mean, look, I'm going to be honest and say that I pretty much thought it would be 2 line drives off the back of the rim shooting out into the front. I think the funny part about Mitchell is I think when he makes one, he even looks surprised.
Yes.
And up to this point, we've given out report cards on Brown. I don't think it's fair. It's still pretty early. But I think most good Knicks fans said, let's look at 20 games and let's see where they're at when they're finished through 20 games and see. I think overall, Brown has been good. I like the up style and the up pace of the offense. Ball movement was responsible for Landry Shamet's 2 3-point shots as well. Brunson made a nice look. Shamet got to the spot. And Hart, off the offensive rebound of his own miss, got a good pass out to Shamet. He got his feet set and hit. And then Shamet, who hadn't done much in the game, goes step for step with Brandon Williams down the side. He would have gone in to tie that game. The fact he was there, yes, may have been a gift call. The fact that Shamet kept up with one of the quicker guys in the league, I think was very impressive.
What do you think of the call? Did you think it was an offensive foul? Honest opinion.
I think in most times they don't really call that. The hook wasn't, yes, the arm went around, but the hook wasn't that dramatic. I didn't see Shamit's body move in any way. So to be honest with you, I think we got a gift.
Totally fair. I want to circle back around on Brown because you had brought up Brown, and we were talking about it earlier on the putback with Ian Begley on SNY. I think one thing that Ian's talked about and that we've talked about with Brown is he's been very willing to accept responsibility as a coach and talk about things that he thinks he wants to do better on, which I think is something that we did not see with his predecessor, Tom Thibodeau. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I think both are acceptable styles of coaching, but I know it's something, Uncle Mike, that you've talked about, with all the years of experience watching the Knicks, the coaches they've had. So I've tabbed that with Brown as something. When he sits down at his post-game pressers, a lot of times he'll point out things that he feels like he wants to do better at.
I totally agree. I brought it up when we had Mike Vaccaro on last week that when Brown came in to the presser and took the pressure off the team and said, listen, I was all over the map tonight on my substitutions, okay? Sometimes something like that, first of all, it shows the players that, you know what, while we're picking this system up, this coach just went out and, took a lot of the blame and put it on himself and removed it from the players. Then a day later, Brunson followed and said, hey, guess what? We need to have Mike Brown's back. He's got our back. So it was kind of a cumulative effect. I love the way Brown did it. I love Brown's communication. The big test for Mike Brown, and I know it's early, is what are we going to do? What are the Knicks going to do to improve their perimeter defense? Let me ask you this. 3 questions. Do they just not react quick enough? Do they not communicate even on the switches? Or are their feet, are they just not athletic enough to do what they're asking to do to guard, double down, and get back to the rotation? Can you answer that?
As always, I think it's probably a mix of everything, right? I fear that their personnel is going to limit them in this field, right? Like, I think there's no doubt about that. They're 29th this year in opposing three-point shooting percentage, and they were 26th last year. Obviously different teams, but I think in some ways their personnel is just going to limit them there because, again, they have smaller guards and you're without OG. And I think we have to keep ourselves honest there too. Every time you're without OG, he is such a game changer on the defensive end. And you talk about closeouts, which I think have been, maybe their biggest problem. OG is one of the best closeout guys in the league because of his wingspan. So I think it's all the above. I think it's something they're going to try to improve upon. I view it, Uncle Mike, as if they could be league average, it's probably for the best. I will also say, though, and I'd pass this right back to you. I think one of the things about early season, they've played 15, 20 games, right? 3-point shooting especially, there's a lot of noise in there. There's a lot of luck at play. There's a lot of different factors that come into play, and it's a smaller sample size. So I want to see more before saying that they won't be able to defend the 3. But the fact that they were 20 last year and that they're 29th now is not instilling confidence.
No, that's 100% sure. And I think, let's just go back to last year real quick. I thought one of the big mistakes, and I'm not even going to really dwell on the coach on this, but I thought that the Knicks were so enamored with trying to score more points in their offense that they didn't have an identity. There was not once that the Knicks came out and said, well, while we experiment offensively, we're a defensive team. And I think it's so important. Now, they really don't have an identity yet, but it's been stated, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to move the ball quicker. We want to have more ball movement so there's more open shots. Pretty much every game they've taken more shots than their opponent. That's a pretty good sign. But like you're saying, it's still pretty early in the process. I think that the Knicks can play better defense because, you know what? If you looked at the last 3 minutes last night, they played a little bit tighter in the last 3 minutes. Defense is effort. So I think that they can improve. I think maybe scheme needs to be revised a little bit, but I really believe that defense is effort, man, and I think they can improve their perimeter defense. I really do.
Yeah, and closeouts too, right? I think the biggest part of closeouts is communication and effort together. And I think it's easy to say, these guys have been playing together. A lot of these guys, right? The roster, the depth is obviously different this year, but these guys are playing together. This should be something that they're better at. This should be something that they're able to do. It's not easy. Let's talk. I want to talk about one guy, Uncle Mike, Mikal Bridges, who I think has looked much more comfortable this year. And I think last year, a lot of people just assumed because he had played with Brunson and Hart previously at Villanova that he was going to come in and be just a seamless fit. They wouldn't have to have this huge learning curve. And there was a huge learning curve, right? It took till the end of the year for him to really look comfortable. I think he's looked a lot more comfortable this year and I think he's been really impressive so far this year. You just feel much more comfortable watching him, and you can tell on the court, his body language and everything. So to relate that to their defense writ large, I think a lot of times these things take time. These things take time to learn each other's fits. They have a new coach in their ear telling them things you mentioned. I'm sure that Brown wants to do things differently with his coaching staff than Thibodeau did, right? How he's going to assign people. There's probably different voices in their ears, but I think to Brown's credit, something that they've done a better job of this year is defining roles and being clear about what they want their identity to be. And I think that's hopefully made things a little more clear for the players and will allow them to build on that identity as the season goes on.
We said defense is effort, but nowadays all you have to do is look at the seats behind the Knick bench. Back in the old days, it was Red Holzman, it was Danny Whalen, the trainer. There were no assistant coaches. Now, the schemes are different. The athletes are much different. Defensive reads. I mean, the Knicks basically, in the old days I'm talking, had one play, was called the 2-3-F, and they had about 7 or 8 different options. Now, I don't believe Mike Brown is even running offensive plays right now. I think they're just going out and wheeling it and playing offensively free, if you will.
I mean, the thing with the NBA this day you mentioned too is there's you mentioned 7, 8, 9, 10 sets that they run that are very basic plays, horns, ice. These are names that you hear offense and defense coaches blurt out. And, a lot of it's improvisation. I think something that Thibodeau did a lot of was, the game will tell you what to do, right? That was his big thing that he would say. And I think Brown with the ball movement's been much different. I mean, you look at their 3-point shooting, they're shooting 43 threes per 100 possessions this year. They shot 34 last year. That's a big difference. And I find sometimes that style of basketball where it's just let's shoot a bunch of threes and hope. We saw last year in the playoffs for the Boston Celtics how that went for them against the Knicks, and I think that's their style of play. I don't always love that, but I think the Knicks have enough shooting, and I think that's why Brown loves playing Shamet, right? Is that not a big reason why he loves playing Shamet and Clarkson, who I want to talk about a little bit too, because I think he's been impressive, especially over the last few games. That's why they brought these guys on, right? And Clarkson, a guy that his role has expanded as Brunson was hurt, and I still thought he was crucial to the win last night too.
I think when Clarkson comes in, you have to take the good with the bad. Sometimes he's all over the place. See, I don't mind that because once he comes in, he gives you that bench presence.
He had other options, and the more time that goes on, they're going to learn more about the team, right? I think that I'll give Brown credit for this as well, that I think he's experimented as much as he can with different lineup iterations, and obviously having Brunson out for a period of time and having OG out now, which I expect his absence will continue, unfortunately, because, hamstrings can be tricky. And we know he's a guy that struggled with some lower body injuries in his career. And I think they're going to play it safe there.
He looks at it as a challenge. And I think Brown has given him a lot of confidence. And I think that's made a huge difference. The final thing I'll say on defense is what I see with this team too is when OG is in the lineup and he's cutting off the passing lanes, Bridges does the same thing. McBride comes up with a steal or two. When Mitchell's in the game, and we can talk load management forever, but when Mitchell's there and blocks a shot, that's when I think the Knicks play their best defense. First of all, that helter-skelter all over the floor seems to get them spurring. It gets them running offensively as well. But that's when I think they take that lead and go into a better defensive style. So I think they're going to have to, it's a formula. They're going to have to go up and down with it and see what works.
For sure. And their defense changes a lot when Mitch is in there or he's not in there, right? Like he's an essential cog in the defense, and their defensive identity changes a ton when he's out there. And we know he's not going to play in the majority of these games, right? But he's such an impactful player on a minute by minute basis that you want to keep him healthy and do everything you can to keep him on the floor. So listen, they're going to learn as much as they possibly can. It's a shame to not have OG out there. Like OG is one of my favorite Knicks that I've ever watched when I've been a fan, just because of what he's able to do. You mentioned, his cutting, his backdoor cutting, his 3-point shooting. You know what's something I love about OG, also Uncle Mike? He dunks the basketball at such a high rate. When he's around the rim, a lot of guys, like even Mikhail does this. He's done a much better job of this year. But when OG's around the rim, he tries to dunk the basketball more than almost any other forward in the league. And it's such an effective way to score. It sounds like a basic thing, right? But it's such an effective way to score.
You give a guy no chance to knock it off the backboard, okay? In
Right,
fact,
right.
last night, Lively and a couple people came up with blocks on kind of almost timid layups against the rim. And you're right, that's a great point. OG always does that. Listen, OG is a tremendous, what would be called a defensive stopper, but he does so many other things. And his development now of that jump shot from both outside and in the corners is spectacular to go along with his ability. And I think Mike Brown loves him. He's his
Of
guy on
course.
defense, no question.
How could you not? How could you not? And they'll miss him. But it's again these games, they matter, of course. You look at the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are, I think, third right now. I mean, Detroit's been red hot. How about them? The way that they've played with Cade Cunningham.
They're tough.
When the season keeps going on, that's when you want these guys to be healthy. The Knicks know that. We know that. We'll see where they are as the season progresses, and you want to be healthy when you get into April and May. That's what's going to be the key.
The last question that I have, and I can answer it myself before I even ask you. I can sit here, look into the camera, and talk about what I think the Knicks need to keep at that level to contend for a title. But when I'm sitting in my chair and the game is in the third or fourth quarter and there's no camera on, I am pretty embarrassing to watch, okay? I've been a Knicks fan for so long, and I want to see them win another title that I actually get crazy. So this is actually a time for me to relax. I can only ask you how your behavior is.
Well, at least you saw them win a title, is what I would say to you. At least you saw them win one.
Fair.
Fair. I was what, negative 22? I was born in 1995. So
You were negative 22 is right, and plus. You were negative 22
yes.
plus.
So I grew up hearing your stories about watching the Knicks win a title, hearing you and your brothers and my father, and obviously your father talk about the Knicks. I'm just yearning for that. You talk about my behavior. I have two cats at my home. When there's a big game, they are frightened of me. They go running under the bed because I yell with the best of them at the game.
I love it.
And my girlfriend here likes to poke fun at the comments I make. I think I follow a lot of my dad's vernacular. Them beating the Celtics in the playoffs last year was one of the best Knick wins that I've experienced in my lifetime. And maybe number one, which of course was followed up by the number one most painful loss of my Knicks fandom that we'll have to really, I don't think we'll really get over until they win a title. So the idea of this being a team that is finals or bust in a lot of ways, right, is incredibly exciting. I think it puts a lot of pressure on them, but look at the team again from the top down. Brunson's a guy that wants that pressure. He wants to be on the spotlight. He wants to have the pressure on him to lead them to that point. And if they do it, it'll be one of the best sports moments of all of our lives that are Knicks fans. And if they don't, it'll be incredibly devastating. But that's sports, right? That's why we tune in every night.
And it'll be fun because we're going to be into the ride, for this ride together. Listen, I appreciate you taking time to jump on the podcast with me. I love your stuff. Matt Spendley, Director of Digital Engagement at SNY Sportsnet New York. You do a tremendous job. I'm extremely proud of you. I can talk about anything in life with you, but we have this bond now. We'll be riding this train all the way through the season. I'm going to do some live stuff as the season goes along. I hope you can join me on some of that stuff as well, Matt. I really appreciate you being here, buddy.
Of course, Uncle Mike. And listen, for your audience too, Uncle Mike's one of the main reasons why I'm such a big Knicks fan and such a big sports fan. And his conversations and with his brothers and the whole Spendley family is the reason why we are today. And there's nothing a couple Spendleys like more than hearing themselves talk about the Knicks. So here we are.
I appreciate my nephew, Matt Spendley from SNY, jumping on with us today. Matt will be on. He's an unbelievable Knicks fan, and he'll be on with us covering and giving us some ideas of what's happening around the coverage of the Knicks as well. So we appreciate all of that. And Matt is a special young man, and he's always going to be a part of the fixture of this Knicks broadcast. Before we leave, one of the things we're going to do this year is begin what we call the In the Huddle Club. So if you have a chance, just drop us a line at michaelspendley.com. Leave us your email, and we will get some information out to you. What we're going to do is we're going to do some live broadcasts. We're going to do some interviews with hopefully some Knick Hall of Famers that we sit down, some special stuff as we move along throughout the season. So once again, go to michaelspendley.com. Drop us an email, give us your email, and we'll get the stuff out to you, and we'll improve and we'll go along as the season progresses. Once again, thank you for listening and watching. I've really enjoyed this show. This was a special show for me, and this is what it's about.